There's a reason why stalker stories feel so much more terrifying than ghost stories or monster myths, because unlike the paranormal, stalkers are real. They're out there, living, breathing, and sometimes watching. Right now, someone could be walking home, headphones in, never realizing they're being followed. Someone else could be dating a person they think is just intense, not knowing that intensity will one day turn into obsession. These aren't ghost stories. These are true, real stalkers, real people, real terror. It started with the kind of love that feels too good to be true. Her name wasn't really Grace, but that's what we'll call her. I met her back in my senior year of high school just 2 years ago. I was 17, just starting to understand what love was supposed to feel like, or at least what I thought it was. We worked together at the same place, and I now realize that was mistake number one. Work relationships can be messy. And this one? This one was a red flag festival from day one. At first, I thought it was sweet. She'd hang around the shop for hours, even when she wasn't on shift, just to see me. I'd glance over while bagging items or stocking shelves and catch her staring, not smiling, just watching. I ignored it, told myself she was just in love, just supportive. But as the months passed, I felt like I was in a pressure cooker. She had to know where I was at all times. If I didn't answer a text within 5 minutes, she'd blow up my phone with 20 more. If I didn't pick up her call, I'd come back to dozens of missed calls and paragraphs of emotional manipulation. I tried to stay patient. I thought maybe she just had abandonment issues or trust problems. But she didn't want a boyfriend. She wanted ownership. Eventually, I had to call it off. I told her I couldn't do it anymore, that I needed space to breathe. That's when the mask fully came off. At first, she showed up at my work, not on shift, just lingering, watching from the parking lot. Then, she started following me out to my car, not yelling, not crying, just standing there, blocking the door. One night, I made the mistake of agreeing to just talk in her car. She was trying to threaten me with some ridiculous lawsuit. I can't even remember the details. It was all just a manipulation tactic. But when I tried to leave, that's when things got physical for the first time. She locked the door and grabbed my arm, digging her nails into my skin, hard enough to leave marks. Her face, I can't describe it. It wasn't sadness. It was something else. Malice. Like she'd been waiting for this moment. I managed to get free, barely. I pulled her toward me and used that moment to unlock the door and run. I didn't look back. I just drove home, heart pounding, skin still stinging. I wish that had been the end. That night, I was home alone playing GTA 5, trying to distract myself. I'd smoked a little to calm my nerves, so when I heard a car outside, I figured it was just the game. But then came the tapping. Soft, deliberate, tap, tap. Then, her voice. She was outside my window at 2 a.m., whispering my name. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but the tapping grew louder, and her voice got more desperate. My blinds didn't cover the whole window, so I knew she could see me in there, sitting frozen with a controller in my hands. I didn't want to open the window, but I also didn't want to ignore her. What if she broke something? I asked what she wanted. She said she wanted her sweater back. That was her excuse. I told her to leave or I'd call the police. She started screaming at me, loud enough that the neighbors probably heard. Then she started crying, but I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt sick, because just as I was about to shut the window, I saw something. No, someone, to her left. There was a tree in our front yard, Thick trunk, low-hanging branches, and behind it, just barely visible in the dark, was a second figure, a hooded person, not moving, just watching. My blood ran cold. Grace noticed the shift in my gaze and grabbed my arm through the window, trying to pull me toward her, and that's when the figure darted forward. I slammed the window shut on her arm. She screamed, jerking away. I managed to lock it just in time before the second person, whoever they were, reached the glass. I held up my phone, showed them I was calling 911. That's when they ran. They jumped in Grace's car. She was crying, still holding her arm. And then they were gone. The cops came, took a statement. But without evidence, there wasn't much they could do. She didn't get arrested. Nothing went on record. For weeks afterward, I kept my bedroom lights on at night. Every sound made me jump. Even now, I can't walk past that window without remembering the figure behind the tree. The way they stood so still. The way they waited until the exact right moment to rush me. Grace had told me stories about people she knew who'd been jumped or robbed. Looking back, I think that was their plan. To scare me, hurt me, maybe worse. I don't know who the person with her was. A friend, a new boyfriend, someone she manipulated like she manipulated me. What I do know is this: I got lucky. And the only reason I'm here to tell this story is because I saw them before they reached me. My mom always said, "Don't rent to strangers." But after college, I needed help paying rent, and my one-bedroom apartment in Oregon had a sunroom I figured I could convert. Nothing major, just a bed, a curtain, and a Craigslist post. Big mistake. The guy who responded, let's call him Aaron, seemed normal, quiet, early 30s, wore those wireframe glasses that make people look like they read a lot. He worked the night shift at some distribution warehouse and said he'd barely be around. That was perfect for me. I liked my space. The first few weeks were fine. He kept to himself, always paid rent on time, didn't talk much, but I figured, hey, some people are just introverts. But then, weird little things started happening. First, it was the bathroom. I'd wake up and the toilet seat would be up, even though I know I put it down. Not a big deal. But then, I'd notice my towel, my specific purple one, would be damp when I hadn't showered yet. One morning, I walked in to brush my teeth and found a single black hair on the sink. I'm blonde. Aaron had a buzz cut. That didn't sit right. Then, I started finding my door unlocked in the morning. I never forgot to lock it. Never. I'm borderline obsessive about that. At first, I thought maybe the lock was faulty. I asked Aaron if he noticed anything weird. He just shook his head and said, "You probably just forgot. People forget things when they're stressed." Okay, sure. I let it go. But things escalated. One night, I got home around 10 p.m. Aaron's car wasn't in the driveway, so I figured I had the place to myself. I microwaved some leftovers, popped on a movie, and settled in on the couch. Halfway through the movie, I heard a sound. Not like a creak or something settling. A deliberate sound. A click, like a door handle turning. I muted the TV, held my breath. Then, another sound. A soft shuffle, like someone walking barefoot out down the hall. I called out, "Aaron?" No response. I got up, turned on the hallway light, and walked slowly toward the sunroom. The curtain was drawn shut, like always, but I swear I saw it move. Just a slight ripple. I called his name again. Nothing. I almost pulled the curtain aside, but I chickened out. I told myself it was my imagination, went back to the living room, turned the volume up, and tried to forget it. But I couldn't. The next morning, I left for work and decided to check the sunroom while he was gone, just to ease my paranoia. When I opened the curtain, my stomach dropped. His bed was neatly made, but on the floor next to it was a pair of my underwear. I stood there, frozen. I didn't know what to do. Confront him? Call the cops? But there was no proof. For all I knew, he could say I was framing him. So I did something desperate. I bought a cheap nanny cam off Amazon, hid it inside a decorative plant in the living room, aimed at the hallway, just for peace of mind. 3 nights later, I got my answer. Aaron had told me he worked nights, remember? That he was never home? Well, that was a lie. Around midnight, while I was dead asleep, he crept out of the sunroom barefoot, quiet as a shadow. He walked straight to my bedroom door, which, thank God, I had started locking, and just stood there for over an hour. Just stood there, his face right up against the door, not moving. At one point, he raised his hand like he was about to knock, then put it down, and left. That footage chilled me to the core. The next morning, I called my brother and told him to come over immediately. We watched the clip together, and he lost it. Wanted to confront Aaron right away. I told him no. We'd call the cops, file a report. The police came that afternoon, took my statement, watched the video. But since he hadn't technically done anything illegal, hadn't entered my room, hadn't stolen anything, they couldn't arrest him. So I served him a 30-day notice to vacate. Legally, that's all I could do. That's when things turned dark. Aaron stopped pretending. He started leaving his door open at night, blasting music, pacing loudly so I couldn't sleep. He'd stare at me at breakfast, not talk, just stare. I started crashing at friends' houses. My apartment no longer felt safe. He was unraveling. Then came the worst night of my life. I came home one afternoon to pack a bag. Thought he'd be gone at work. But the second I stepped inside, I felt it, like someone had been waiting. The place was quiet, too quiet. I crept down the hall, clutching my keys like a weapon. Just as I reached my room, I noticed the curtain to the sunroom was open, wide open. I looked inside. Aaron wasn't there. But on the wall above his bed were photos of me, dozens of them, printed out, some blurry, some clear, all taken without me knowing, at the grocery store, in my car, sleeping. He had been watching me for months. I ran, didn't grab a single thing, just sprinted to my car and drove until my hand stopped shaking. That night, I filed a restraining order and left town to stay with my sister. When the 30 days were up, my brother went with a locksmith and changed all the locks. Aaron left behind his mattress, his clothes, and the wall of photos. We never saw him again, but every now and then, I wonder if he still watches. From a distance, a new apartment, a new victim. My mom was right. Never rent to strangers. I never believed in ghosts. I didn't believe in anything that couldn't be explained by science. But after what happened to me, I'm not so sure anymore. It started when I moved into my first apartment in the city. It was a small, run-down place, but I loved it. A cozy little studio with a big bay window that looked out onto the street. The rent was cheap. It had character. That's what I told myself anyway. I was young, in my mid-20s, just starting a new job. I was excited about my new life. The first few weeks were great. I'd come home after work, throw on some music, and curl up with a book or a movie. The apartment was quiet, peaceful. I felt at home. But then, I noticed something strange. It started with the window. Not the big bay window, but the smaller one in the back of the apartment, facing the alley. I hadn't paid much attention to it at first, but one day, I happened to glance out while I was washing dishes and saw a figure, a shadow. It wasn't clear at first, just a blur in the corner of my eye. I thought it was my imagination, so I didn't think much of it. But the next day, I saw it again. This time, the figure was clearer. A tall, thin silhouette standing just outside the window. I couldn't make out any features, but it was there, watching. I figured it was just someone passing by, maybe a neighbor. But the longer I stared, the more I realized something wasn't right. The figure wasn't moving. It was just standing there, staring into the apartment. I froze. My heart started pounding in my chest. I couldn't tear my eyes away from it. I should have moved away from the window, called someone. But I just stood there, paralyzed by the sight of it. Then it vanished. I blinked, and it was gone. Just like that. I thought I was going crazy. I must have imagined it, I told myself. It was just the shadows, the way the light was hitting the window. Maybe it was a trick of the mind. But the next night, it happened again, and this time, I wasn't imagining it. There it was, standing outside the window, staring in at me with its dark, empty shape. I didn't even need to get close to see it anymore. It was unmistakable. I tried to tell myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe it was a neighbor's reflection, or something outside my window, causing the shadow. But every night, it was there, always there. The worst part was that it was never in the same place. One night, it would be in the corner of the window, just standing there. The next night, it would be right up against the glass, as if it was pressing its face against it. Other nights, it would be halfway up the window, moving slowly, almost as if it was trying to get inside. I started locking all my windows at night. I even moved my bed away from the window, but it didn't matter. Every time I turned off the lights and lay in bed, I could feel it. I could feel its presence. The anxiety kept building up. I barely slept. I'd stare at the window all night, waiting for it to appear again. I'd look for any sign of it, but it was always just out of sight. I'd hear noises in the alley, hear footsteps, but there was never anyone there. Then came the worst night. I was lying in bed, wide awake, as usual, when I heard something that made my blood run cold. A tap, 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 tap. It was coming from the window, not the bay window, but the smaller one. I tried to ignore it. Maybe it was just a branch hitting the glass, or maybe it was my imagination. But the tapping didn't stop. It was persistent, rhythmic, like someone, or something, was trying to get my attention. I got up, grabbed a flashlight, and slowly made my way toward the window. I could feel my heart racing, my breath shallow. I shone the light through the cracks in the blinds, but I saw nothing. No figure, no shadow, just the empty alley. I let out a shaky breath, relieved. But as I was about to turn away, I noticed something that made my blood freeze. There, in the reflection of the glass, I could see the silhouette of a person, a shadow, tall and thin, standing just behind me. I turned around, but no one was there. I checked every corner of the apartment, every closet. Nothing. No one. But that shadow, it never left. I could feel it there with me, always lurking just behind me, in the reflection of the window, in the mirror. It was as if the thing had followed me inside, just waiting for the right moment. The next morning, I moved out. I couldn't stay there another night. I packed my things, told the landlord I was leaving, and found a new apartment on the other side of town. But the shadow followed me. Not physically, of course. I didn't see it again. But every time I pass a window, every time I see a reflection in glass, I feel it. That thing that watched me from the alley. Yipa. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was a ghost. Maybe it was something else. But I know this. I will never be able to look at a window the same way again. And I'm always waiting for it to come back. I should have never gone to that party. I should have stayed home. But it was my friend's birthday, and she begged me to come. It was one of those parties where you show up because you feel obligated, and you end up regretting it the moment you step inside. The music was too loud, the people were too drunk, and I was just uncomfortable. But I tried to make the best of it. I grabbed a drink and stood in the corner, watching people dance and laugh like they were in another world. That's when I saw him. He was standing in the doorway of the kitchen, watching me. I didn't recognize him. He wasn't one of the regulars at our group of friends. He looked out of place, older than the rest of us, maybe in his 30s, with messy dark hair and a look in his eyes that I couldn't quite place. But there was something about him that unnerved me. Something off. I tried to ignore him, but every time I glanced over, he was still staring at me. It wasn't a casual glance either. It was intense, predatory, like he was studying me. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I excused myself from my friends and made my way to the bathroom, hoping to shake off the feeling. But when I closed the bathroom door behind me, I heard a soft knock on the wall outside. Tap, 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 tap. I froze. It wasn't just a random noise, it was the same rhythm, the same pattern. My heart began to race. I slowly opened the door, peeked around the corner, and there he was. The man from the kitchen, standing at the end of the hall, staring directly at me. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, smiling that unnerving smile, like he knew something I didn't. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. I didn't go back into the party after that. I grabbed my coat and walked out, telling myself I was just being paranoid. But something deep in my gut told me I wasn't imagining things. The next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about him. His face haunted me, like he was lurking in the back of my mind, waiting for the right moment to surface again. I went to bed that night with a sense of unease that I couldn't shake. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. I kept thinking about his eyes. Those eyes. They were still staring at me, even though he was gone. It wasn't until the following evening that things started to get worse. I was in my living room scrolling through my phone when I heard something faint. A noise, distant but unmistakable. A knock. It was the same rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. I rushed to the window, heart pounding, and looked outside. Nothing, just the street, empty and quiet. I told myself it was nothing, just the wind or someone walking by. But then, later that night, the tapping started again. Tap, 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 tap. It was coming from the side of my house. I got up, grabbed a flashlight, and made my way outside, my breath coming out in sharp gasps. I stood in the dark, trying to listen for any movement, any sign of what was causing the sound. Then I saw it. There, at the edge of my yard, standing just out of reach of the flashlight beam, was the man. His face was more pale than I remembered. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, and that same smile was stretched across his face like a grotesque mask. He didn't say anything. He didn't move. He just stood there, staring at me, like he had been waiting for me to come outside. I could feel my heart racing in my chest. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't move. I was paralyzed. And then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, he disappeared into the darkness. I stood there for what felt like hours, frozen in place, not knowing what to do. But eventually, I stumbled back inside, locking every door and window, praying that whatever this was would end. It didn't. For the next week, I couldn't escape him. Every night, the tapping came. Tap, tap, tap. It would start at one side of the house, then move to the next, and the next, until it circled around to the front door. And every time I went outside, there he was, standing in the shadows, watching me. I tried everything. I called the police, but they couldn't do anything. I changed my number, but the calls kept coming. Each time, there was no voice on the other end, just the sound of breathing. I even moved. I packed up all my things, found a new place on the other side of the city, and thought that maybe, just maybe, I could escape whatever this was. But I couldn't. The tapping started again, just a few days after I settled in. The same rhythm, the same feeling of dread. Tap, 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 tap. And when I looked out my new window, there he was. The man, standing there in the same spot, smiling. This time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt something else, a knowing. The tapping continued, every night, every single night, until one day, I saw his face in my reflection, standing right behind me. He was never going to leave.